Hi, Rain Wilson we saw, and here we go, the first move.
First move, Liem opens with the queen's pawn. He tends to do this, his favourite move since he was the youngster. Black brings his knight out. Okay, what is Liem going to go for? Will we see another London system? We've seen a few of those in this tournament. Will we see Queen's Gambit? There we go. And Liem not playing something recommended in his chessboard course. I would have loved to see Magnus face another London system. He struggled yesterday against Levon Aronian there. Meanwhile, it's instead the Catalan. This is Magnus's favourite opening these days as white. Liem doing Magnus things against Magnus. And that has caused Black to pause. A variety of ways here that Black can react. He can give a check with his dark squared bishop. He can capture the kind of Queen's Gambit pawn, the pawn that's been gambited on c4. Black can develop in a bunch of ways.
It seems to be very popular, the Catalan nowadays. I mean, it's always been quite popular, but I mean, it seems to be rising in popularity, do you think? I mean, you play it. We mentioned a lot of the English grandmasters play it. Niche plays it a lot, and yeah, it's a good way to get that bishop to a fantastic square for the rest of the game. I mean, if you just compare the two bishops that have been developed, White's bishop has much better potential than Black's bishop for across the board, striking through the middle, and I think that's why White tends to do this, positional opening.
Yeah, very positional opening. I think it's the perfect opening for players who prefer slower games, general strategy. Sometimes it's symmetrical. It's just about the power of that white light squared bishop. And I was waiting for the first surprise. There was no way Magnus was going to play the main line there and capture White's pawn. That's just not Magnus's style. Instead, he gains space. This is more Carlsen-esque. He just loves gaining space with pawns in any sort of position. He's just hinting that maybe that black pawn would advance further, getting the black rook in the corner a bit more active. Just generally gaining space. He doesn't have a great reputation, this move, as far as I know, but I probably haven't looked as deeply as Magnus.
Yeah.
No, I've also heard and seen that it doesn't have a great reputation, and I thought it was because of this move, you know, where White just puts the knight on its most aggressive outpost. And usually Black reacts to this knight move by capturing the pawn. But here, not so easy to capture that pawn without making big concessions.
Yeah, Magnus decides not to try and be greedy, not to capture any pawns. He just kind of makes this stronghold in the center with his structure. This is what we kind of call the triangle pawn formation in the middle of the board, where Black just has these pawns all on light squares. Normally we get it from different openings, but yeah, it's a bit passive. Yeah. White normally will get the chance to expand a bit more in the center.
One of the problems, I guess, with this triangle situation is, again, if you look at the bishops, Black's light square bishop, whenever you go for the structure, like in the Slav, the semi-Slav, the triangle, which is a combination of those, the bishop is pretty horrendous, isn't it? Just stuck behind that formation. So you've got to try to play with that bad piece for the rest of the game. On the other hand, I suppose Black might be threatening to take a pawn, so White's got to deal with that. But I kind of feel like, you know, in general, Black should be slightly worse, just because of the pieces. His pieces are worse than White's pieces here.
Yeah, you're right. This pawn may be attacked. There's a few ways to defend it. One idea would be, for example, to advance the queen forward and try to expand in the center. Say if Black plays a passive move here, then maybe the white pawn can step forward. And this is kind of typical in the Catalan. This is White's dream, to kind of obtain these three pawns in the center, forcing Black to commit. Usually Black captures this pawn in the center, and this would be a lot of suffering for Black. White has space. These pawns are fantastic. And as Simon mentions, the key fact is that Black's bishop is just terrible. It will never break out past its own pawns, compared to its counterpart here, which has great scope on the diagonal. And OK, he doesn't go for this, Liem. He does just sacrifice a pawn, at least temporarily. He brings his bishop out. I guess the idea, if pawn takes pawn, is that he wants to bring his knight into the center and regain this guy. It's going to be very difficult for Black to keep this pawn intact. For example, just to illustrate the power of White's Catalan bishop, this beautiful bishop fianchettoed on g2, now White would be able to take this pawn and win some material, win this rook in the corner. This is quite a typical pattern, and White would be doing very well. So I don't think we'll see Magnus capture. Nope. Instead, he just develops his knight. Very solid.
It's very solid, but it's also very passive. Yeah. I mean, I'd hate to play this kind of position as Black, because that bishop, the only way you can try to get that bishop out that I can see is by fianchettoing, which takes quite a lot of time. And even when you fianchetto, You've got to try to break the pawns, get those pawns off the light squares. So if I was white here, I'd be trying to be a bit patient, I think, because I can play against that bishop forever. I love your idea, David, of trying to push the pawn in the middle, and moving the queen 2 squares is very, very tempting. I mean, even move the knight back in front of the queen with the same idea. It might not be ridiculous here, and I know this is an idea that white often uses in these types of positions as well, because you want to give the white's light square bishop more range, and to do that, getting rid of black's pawn in the middle of the board will open up the range of that bishop. So it's just the bishops to me. White has stable advantage here, I'd say.
Yeah, and a bunch of moves to choose from for Liem. Either bringing his queen forward, maybe dropping his knight back. He could just be very, very patient, kind of push his pawn forward, defend this guy. Either way, Liem with the advantage. Magnus very cramped, very passive. Will the world champion be able to break out a bit later? That's the big question. Liem instead just improves his rook. Very calm, very patient, looking nice for white.
Yeah. Looking very solid and for black, and I do like what you guys suggest, where just you play in the centre. That's always the most thematic way in my experience. And whilst Magnus is pausing for thought, well, we do have a selfie competition where we're asking you to tweet us a selfie that will impress our chess expert, Grandmaster David Howell. And the winner will get David's chessable course, Grind Like a Grandmaster, that he did together with Magnus Carlsen. And Leon says, well, sends us a hello from Kenya, just from school in time to watch my role model Pragnananda whilst reading for my exams. Hopefully I won't be grounded like him. reminds me that he ever played a tournament while he had to read for the exams the following day. Because remember, he did that. He was playing in the final and had the exams the next day. And he actually even had to take those exams.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I never actually asked him how he did. Maybe we'll have to get Sverre to ask.
I bet he aced those exams.
I'm sure he did.
But it doesn't really matter, right?
No.
He's got
future's interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, sometimes these exams are super important, and they don't let you go on in life until you've actually passed them.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
Pretty sure the Grandmaster title is more important than
Some crappy exams.
they won't hold him back.
I don't think they'd be like, no, you can't play chess ever again until you pass this exam. So,
But there's some exams, right, in the UK where you have to pass.
not to be a chess grandmaster. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are there?
Depends on what you want to do in life, I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose so. So GCSEs, maybe?
Yeah.
You have to do them, don't you?
No, you have to do them. You have to do like
Do them.
maths, science, English, and then you have to pass one of those core ones. And to
You
go
know
to
a
the
couple of
next
grandmasters who got kicked out of school for failing exams.
Really?
Many years ago. I won't name names, but,
I actually think Magnus Carlsen, he never finished what would be the American equivalent of high school, I think. I don't think he actually finished.
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
Don't try this at home, kids.
No.
Stay in school, stay in
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Prag, multi-talented guy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Black has captured a pawn. Magnus has gone greedy. I guess he had no other kind of alternative. He needed something to suffer for in this position. You might as well suffer with a lack of space, with a bad bishop, by being a pawn up.
I don't know why Liam allowed this, because you didn't need to allow this. You didn't need to unbalance the position. I mean, if you try to win the pawn back now, Black can defend it with a knight. So it seems a bit unnecessary to allow this possibility when you just didn't need to do this. Why give your opponent a pawn that you can maybe sort of hold on to now? There were safer ways to play, and I like taking risks when I play chess. But the analogy is you should always take the safe option if it's a good option. There's no point risking it just for the sake of it. And this just seems to be this rook move a little bit off the right track, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Simon. The rook is somehow looking a little bit strange on that square. But on the other hand, I have to say, in my experience, Catalan players, they do love to give up pawns and sit on their positional space advantage and just go, what you gonna do? I mean, they're not really like outright attackers, so to speak. They just sit and just hold the position down for Black. I actually really dread taking that pawn, although I will do it if you push me.
I'm glad. Next time I play you, Ivanka.
I tried to get greedy against you, Simon, and I ended up nearly getting checkmated. And it was only because, I don't know, I was riding some lucky star there that I didn't get.
Yeah. I remember
Sorry
that
about
one.
that.
Still get the cold sweats. So, yeah. I understand why White's done this, and Liem is a very aggressive player, and he's not scared to sacrifice, and he loves attacking. But you're making it like a free result game, as in you're a pawn down. If your attack doesn't work, you'll lose to Magnus Carlsen being a pawn down. He didn't need to do this, you know. He could have had the same kind of thing, a bit slower, but have an extra pawn. So just you know, why do this? It seems a little bit risky to me, and I love taking risks, but not unnecessary ones, really.
I agree completely with you, Simon. I don't think I would have even dreamt of that rook move. We were looking at kind of defending the pawn and planning to expand in the centre. If you've already done the hard work, got the advantage, got nice pieces, yeah, just play it safe. There's no need to risk that advantage. And okay, White has expanded in the centre. White has two very nice pawns in the middle. I'm slightly curious as well. Magnus, we saw his screen a few moments ago while you guys were chatting, and okay, Magnus is choosing a song, it looks like, on his screen. He just minimised the browser there. He's clearly choosing his music. I was going to say, I'm confused why he's thinking. He was about to push his pawn to b5 instantly. As soon as Liem kind of expanded in the centre, Magnus was ready to react. But then he changed his mind. He's been sitting here for 2 minutes. What else could Magnus be thinking about? Maybe if we jump in, we can try and get inside the world champion's brain. I'm not sure what he's listening to. I wish we knew. But he was about to play this move instantly, Magnus, pushing his pawn 2 squares forward. Makes sense, defending his extra pawn here, maybe destabilising the white knight if he gets the opportunity. Is he potentially scared of white breaking in the centre? I guess he just has gone into calculation mode. The world champion, he needed some tunes there to get pumped up in order to calculate. This white pawn stepping forward. And it's just about whether black is ready for this. The centre is about to explode, and whose pieces are better placed. I guess black can capture this pawn in a variety of ways. And there's a big threat of stepping forward again, trapping this black bishop. So maybe you need to remove the pawn one more time, and we could see a bunch of exchanges. And suddenly the position that we see on the analysis board is completely different to the position we see on the kind of real-time board. But this is the type of position that Magnus has in his mind. He's just trying to weigh up, if all the pawns, all the pieces get exchanged, can he survive here? It does look a bit scary. This rook is attacked in the corner, at the very least as well. This pawn is attacked. White's rooks are getting ready to kind of come to the centre of the board. So, I mean, on the superficial level, looks pretty good for White, this one. Maybe that's why Magnus has changed his mind. And if we go back to the current position, instead of pushing his pawn, allowing that big breakthrough, allowing all those exchanges, what else could he be considering? Maybe your move, Simon, bring the knight to this square, just to stop this pawn push. But it is, again, a bit superficial. You kind of want to put your knight here, but only after having pushed this pawn.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still quite like Liam's position. I mean, I love sacrificing this pawn generally. Yeah. Having these 2 pawns in the centre, I always go for this kind of structure. So I like White, but it's just a bit unnecessary. But finding the next move for black is not easy, saying that. I mean, I'm, you know, looking also at the A pawn, because what else can you do? You know, I mean, you either push the B pawn now, or you move a piece, or you push another pawn, and I don't know. It's like it's not easy to find another move, right? In the position. Maybe you can push that A pawn, possibly. When pushing the B pawn would be even better for black then, because you've got this majority of pawns coming forwards. And the idea here is if White captures that pawn, you get a pawn in the middle. A central pawn would be very nice to capture, destroying White's centre. So this could be the other idea that black's thinking of, maybe.
Yeah. I like your move, Simon. You know, it's kind of greed, you know, taking as much space as possible. I was also thinking about waiting with making any form of commitment. So moves that I was considering is just move the rook to the e8 square. Another one is maybe to push the pawn against the king. It's a luxury move. You know, maybe black can't afford to make a move like this. But that was also on my radar, just to wait and see.
This would be a very Magnus move, just pushing a pawn here, but it does look a bit slow. And this black rook move looks potentially useful, but for now it looks... I mean, it's not the first move that comes to mind, maybe, because it's a bit mysterious. If the centre doesn't open, OK, he goes back to his first instinct.
Yeah.
He pushes his pawn, but he was about to play this 5 minutes ago. Magnus just spent over 5 minutes calculating what's going to happen, and OK, we're going to see the position explode.
Whoa.
And the evaluation bar does not like what Magnus has done. OK, going back slightly, but still in White's favour. things are going to open up, maybe to the benefit of this bishop, which is sitting innocently in front of the king.
Magnus, he's taking the time to choose the music, or I'm not sure if that was Liem, drama happening inside Miami Arena. We're gonna take a quick trip to Miami, to Sverre. What's happening in Miami now, Sverre?
Well, we've been stunned with an impressive chess, but what I'm stunned by right now is probably the most impressive pastry chef I've seen in my life. This is Niranjan Pereira, and he's making, first of all, he's making chess pieces, he's making a chessboard, and this is absolutely spectacular, Niranjan. How do you do this?
Yeah, I was doing this in like 20 years, so everything is a practice, you know. So I work this hotel like 7 years right now. So I love to work this kind of work. That's my specialty.
And this is really Eden Rock Hotel's here way of welcoming this chess tour. This is some of the top and foremost chefs they have working here, either if it's the restaurant or if it is the pastry chef like Mr. Pereira. And how do you even go about beginning? Because I can't see that you have no outline. You're just doing this from your head, are you?
Yeah, that's right. Everything comes to my head, so I create whatever I like. So somebody give me an idea, so I improvise what I can do. So I like to, this is my profession. I like this.
I don't know. I understand that you like it, but I'm just in awe of what is actually possible here, because I can tell you one thing, Kaja. I would not in any shape, way, or form be able to eat this masterpiece when it's actually finished.
I know, it's just too beautiful.
Everything you can edible, say everything chocolate.
Wow.
I agree, Sverre. That's just wow. I mean, he must be a chess player, Chef Pereira, because to be able to carve that out of his own imagination.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's incredible. But I hate to break it to you, I would eat it.
Yeah, I know. I would too. Because that chocolate looked yummy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would eat it with great delight. And I would probably reach for one more, you know.
Eat the
Black
whole
queen, like
the whole chessboard.
White queen.
I know you would eat the whole chessboard, Simon. You love your cake.
I do. I love my cakes. I'm always eating Norwegian cake. Nearly got arrested for eating cake, if you remember one time.
I remember.
Walked out of the supermarket without paying for it. Thought I'd paid for it. Didn't mean to steal the cake, but I'm now known as the Oslo cake thief. So, but yeah, look amazing what he's doing there. Really impressive. But I don't know if he knows what a chessboard looks like. It's a bit longer than that. You know, I'm very critical. That's a bit harsh, you know. But yeah.
He was just showing a pretty checkmate just on one segment of the board.
Yeah, I'm being critical. It's beautiful, beautiful work there. So we need him over here.
Yeah, I know.
You know, we need a cake maker.
Give us a chess cake.
So, yeah.
Very yummy and cool to see. It's all about chess on Miami Beach and in the Eden Rock and Nobu Hotel. It's all about chess inside the Miami Arena as well. David said this position is about to explode open. What's happening?
It has exploded. The whole center has just disappeared. A bunch of pawns disappeared from that middle of the board. Black is still one pawn up, but Magnus has had to resort to playing some really weird, kind of wacky moves. Black's rook now. Normally we develop knights, bishops first, but Black's rook has kind of just swung down the board. I think this was necessary. He needed to cover some very important squares, but also that black rook, as we showed in an earlier variation, it was long-term a target for White's light-squared bishop in the corner, so it needed to run to safety. And that move did cost Magnus a lot of time. He's down now to under 6 minutes on the clock. He was shaking his head a moment ago while we were just admiring that chocolate. And it's up to Liem now. Remember, White is a pawn down. He needs something energetic. He needs to kind of gain some compensation immediately before Magnus is able to organize, consolidate his extra pawn. Yeah, Magnus needs maybe 2 or 3 moves just to get his pieces to better squares, just to get a bit more active, maybe trade off some pieces which would favor Black. What can Liem do in the meantime? There's a bunch of threats he could make here, Liem, but I don't see anything kind of concrete. It looks like a lot of one-move threats. Do you guys see anything here that's tempting for White?
Yeah, I would be tempted actually to get the bishop pair and then just centralize the knight.
Okay, just take this bishop off the board. That's a check. Black will recapture, and then we centralize. Hitting this pawn looks very good. Heading towards our dream square, the f5 square with great attacking potential, and maybe even heading towards this square. Look at this bishop. I mean, it cuts the board in half. Combined with its fellow here, you control all the squares, these two bishops.
This looks very promising, this simple idea. And again, simple's good. You know, let's remember, I think it was Tony Miles, you know, who had this. I mean, I never met Tony. I don't know if you guys had a chance. He was Britain's first ever Grandmaster. I heard some stories about him. He liked complex positions, but he was very famous for saying, simple is good. Just take the simple option. If there's something simple and scary, just play it, especially when the time is short. And I really like this idea. This looks like a very simple and good move.
Yeah,
plan.
Take this bishop off, and the other moves that might come to mind, maybe flicking in this bishop attack against the queen first, but I'm not sure what it achieves. The queen does have one safe square, and I don't really see how you can kind of continue the initiative. For example, you can pin this bishop, but this would invite maybe an exchange, or maybe black's rook could swing across to the defense now. Maybe this is one thing that Liem's considering. But maybe the problem is he wants to keep it simple, but there's just too many tempting moves. Another idea is to bring the knight to this square, hitting the rook, hitting this pawn as well. Yeah, there's a bunch of ideas, but I like your one, Jovanka. Just simple and safe. Take this bishop off, centralize your pieces. Yeah, Liem burning a lot of time now, catching up with Magnus on the clock.
Yeah, maybe too many tempting options, as you say, David. I mean, moving the bishop in, moving the rook, but I think, you know, you've got to play practically, haven't you? If you do see a good move, you could get carried away with all the possibilities, but taking the bishop is always going to give you enough compensation for the one pawn you're down, because you have these fantastic bishops. And again, we're talking about black's light square bishop. It has the potential to move, but it still hasn't moved, and it's still going to struggle to move in that last variation. So there's many small problems, and I don't think Magnus will be very happy with this position, right? What song is he going to put on?
Zoom in here.
Can we see it?
Magnus has his priorities straight, going back to the music while Liem thinks. He needs something fast. He needs something to get him motivated. Magnus mentioned he was in trouble in the last game. He managed to escape from that trouble. He might need to do the same again.
Did anyone catch it?
I didn't catch that. Any of our viewers more eagle-eyed than us, maybe?
Prodigy?
Yeah. Well, he needs something positive, energetic. And I'm just reading this tweet, actually, that we saw, that you were talking about leaving school with no formal qualifications, and Fischer left school
as well,
without completing his high school. And as pointed out by one of our audience, he had an IQ of 181.
Yeah.
That's our Kirk.
It's rookie numbers. I'm joking, that's impressive.
Have you ever tested your IQ, David?
Probably 1.81.
No, it's probably very high. Is it like that? I remember I asked some of the players once, is it like that chess players will, in general, have a higher IQ than the average in the population?
I know some stupid ones.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, I mean, you might be good at playing chess, but I also, like Simon, I knew a grandmaster who could not pack. I mean, can you imagine that? And there's a famous story that Tal, he didn't, I mean, chess players are known for not driving cars.
Yep.
And Tal, you know, he just could not drive a car. And whenever someone got in the car to drive, he would just look at them like, whoa, you're like the cleverest person on earth.
He's probably too drunk, wasn't he? No, I mean, I'm joking. He liked his drink.
Is that IQ anyway?
Sorry.
Driving a car, yeah, that's the
IQ.
question, right?
Practical.
I mean, high IQ, low EQ, maybe.
And I'm always a bit, you know, I'm not really sure these IQ tests are very valid, because I mean, you can, I don't know, are they a good indication of intelligence?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure, to be honest. So, yeah. OK, he's played another move, David, here.
Meanwhile, he went for Jovanka's first move, trading off the knight for the bishop. So White has the bishop pair. We've talked about that a lot today, but a very important factor. And White is just trying to kind of undermine, with a minority attack, those black pawns on the left flank. White has 2 against black's 3, but those black 3 might become weak after a bunch of exchanges. And, OK, black's queen jumping in. Makes some sense. The evaluation part, again, not a fan, but Magnus played that one very quickly. We saw his screen a moment ago. He was highlighting his queen. He had a bunch of squares he could have chosen, but this is the most active for the queen. Maybe, I mean, he could go for something along the lines of your idea from earlier, Jovanka. The white knight could jump into the centre now, or maybe after a pawn exchange first. it does feel like White's pieces are just so perfectly placed. It feels like there must be some something you can kind of achieve with them, but I don't really see it yet. Magnus, he kind of has these Levon-Aronian knights like we saw in the last game where the two black knights just defend each other. They keep a lot of squares covered. It's just about whether you can overwhelm the black army at some point. Black's pieces, especially that bishop as well. Terrible, but defending. Maybe defensively they're okay.
Yeah, definitely a tense moment here in the position. And whilst Liem is thinking about a way to conduct his attack, well, we do have a selfie competition where we're asking to some people, well, for our audience to tweet a selfie that will impress Grandmaster David Howell. And Stufftasticness says, "I've just printed my first chess set. Can you and Magnus teach me how the knight moves?" You know, knights are very important in Magnus's game right now.
Impressive.
And very impressive.
3D printing.
Okay. And meanwhile, we have a move from Liem. He has retreated the bishop to attack the queen. I wasn't expecting that. You know, somehow I was in the mentality of go forward.
Yeah, that's very surprising. I'm not sure whether that's ambitious or whether it's just an attempt to simplify things. Black's queen has a choice of 2 pawns to capture right now. She is under fire. Which pawn would you guys capture? I mean, if Magnus, for example, wants to play it safe, could he simply get rid... OK, I was going to say this exact pawn, the exact move that Magnus has played. This pawn is the one doing the putting on the pressure here. You can trade off the queens. Magnus has done so. Remember, he's a grinder. He likes to grind out these endgames. He's in an endgame now, and he's still a pawn up, temporarily, at least. This pawn is probably going to drop. Magnus says, OK, I'm going to counterattack against your pawn. If, for example, here, all of the pawns are eliminated on this side, then most likely it will be a draw. It's just 3 pawns against 3 pawns. But White maybe has a small advantage with the bishop pair, despite the simplified nature. This is what Magnus is hoping for. He's got to bank on the fact he can draw this position. But if you're Liem here, do you eliminate these 2 for White's 1, or do you try and keep White's 1 on the board? There's also a secondary threat of a bishop skewer on the 2 white rooks. So maybe you have to go for something like this.
Maybe you have to do it. But if we were to fast forward to that endgame that you highlighted, I mean, is it so easy? I mean, at first sight, it looks tremendously easy for... OK, Liem actually decides not to do that. Instead, he doubles up and attacks the light square bishop.
Yeah, so he has hit this piece. This bishop, I think it's been begging to move the whole game, so it's going to be very grateful. It's given that little nudge, and it will happily jump out the way, gaining time against the white rook. And now we will see this kind of transition. And suddenly, where do you put this bishop?
Are they allowed to offer draws?
No. Yeah, hang on.
I'm just wondering.
40, if I
After move 40, right? OK, I should obviously know that, but because this is the kind of position where, you know, barring any blunders, it should be a draw, right? I mean, because as you said, all the pawns are on one side of the board, and you have to have fantastic pieces to win this. But I don't think...
Shouldn't be enough.
I don't think it's enough.
I don't think it's enough, but you can have your fun.
As White.
Trying.
You could try, yeah.
Yeah, you know, attack the rook as Liem's done, and then you attack the bishop, and you keep just asking questions to Magnus. You know, what are you going to do with your pieces? Because, I mean, Black's knights, they're not great. Let's face it, they're superfluous knights. None of them can move.
Just don't let your pieces be taken, and then you should be all right.
It would require a blunder from Magnus, I think, for Liem to win this game. Also, Liem is now down on the clock by 2 minutes. I don't think he would be too unhappy with the draw here either, so Magnus has solved his problems.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see bishop c3 and the rook go back now, but...
Yeah, a dance between the rook and the
potentially, just to get the draw here.
Yeah, so it looks like this one is going to fizzle out, but it was just that retreating move. People, I don't know what it is. It's the Magnus effect. I've been there myself against Magnus. We take negative decisions. I think Liem just wanted to play it safe, and OK, after this last capture, we're definitely going to see a draw now. Ooh. Everything is just going to get hoovered off the board. We see a bishop and knight disappear. We see the remaining bishops disappear. It's just 3 versus 3 on the same side. No passed pawns. Dead draw.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say people play safe against Magnus. I mean, that's it's understandable. But in a match situation, the only way you can win is by winning. So you have to, you know, if you get a good position, you have to try and push it as much as you can. One thing that you mentioned, Anish is not doing enough really, and I think Liem went for this kind of ending, and it was, yeah, I mean, that bishop retreat was just negative, wasn't it? Negative idea.
It's just forcing this type of drawish position, and look how symmetrical it is now. The pawn structure, the kings.
But
Magnus is just going to move his king back and forth.
One of my criticisms is that earlier on, when he had the bishop pair, I feel like, yeah, OK, ultimately it was a draw, but he could have pushed it a little bit harder here. This was just easy stuff from Magnus.
I saw two-pack up there.
I did too, yeah.
That was a bit of two-pack, wasn't it, at the top?
About a podcast as well, maybe?
Listening to podcasts while playing in one of the top tournaments in the world, that's impressive. But game 2 between Magnus and Liem, it is also a draw. They are still